Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, أَفَمَنْ شَرَحَ اللَّهُ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ فَهُوَ عَلَى نُورٍ مِّنْ رَبِّهِ فَوَيْلٌ لِلْقَاسِيَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ مِنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ صَدَقَ اللَّهُ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ. Illuminate your hearts and minds with a very loud salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
One of the most dangerous and one of the worst diseases that a human being can be inflicted with is not cancer, it's not HIV, it's not diabetes, but it is actually a type of disease that penetrates the heart. It is the disease of having one's heart hardened, the disease of hardening the heart. When a human being is inflicted with the disease of qaswat al-qalb, of the hardening of the heart, you find that this human being can no longer interact fully with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This person does not enjoy his worship. This person, when he or she reads the Quran, cannot interact with the verses of the Holy Quran. We read the Quran page after page, and it's as if I'm reading something in a different language. It does not speak to my heart. It does not move me. Or sometimes, no matter how many lectures I listen to, how many pieces of advice I listen to, it simply does not work. It simply has no impact on me. This is the disease of qaswat al-qalb, the disease of the hardening of the heart. And I tell you, this is one of the worst diseases a human being can be inflicted with. It is this disease that keeps us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from our faith. And it is this disease that does not allow us to prepare well for the hereafter. There are many causes to the hardening of the heart, many factors that contribute to the hardening of the heart. And one of those factors is probably the most important factor. But we human beings, we are usually unaware of this factor, this very dangerous factor. Now, before addressing this factor, let us examine some of the very common factors that contribute to the hardening of the heart. Some of the causes that actually make the human being qasi, and they bring about qaswatul qalb. One of the most important causes of qaswatul qalb is the lack of the mention and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not to constantly remember God over time hardens one's heart. Anything that the human being engages in which there is no remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in which there is nothing discussed that pleases the Almighty God, what does this do to the human being? It hardens the heart. In one hadith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Prophet Musa alayhi salam, O Musa, inna tarka dhikri yuqsi al-qalb. Not remembering me, not mentioning my name, not thinking about me hardens the heart. In another hadith, Prophet Isa alayhi salam used to tell his disciples, he used to tell them that لا تكثروا بالكلام في غير ذكر الله فإنه يقسي القلب. Many people, they have the habit of speaking a lot. That's how they are. Wherever they are, in any gathering, in any discussion, they have a habit of speaking a lot. Now, if you speak a lot without the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet Isa says, over time, you will find that your heart becomes hardened. Now, when we speak about the heart in Islamic literature, what is the heart referring to? We're not speaking about this physical organ that pumps or circulates blood in our bodies. The heart in Islamic literature is the center of the human personality. It's the hub of your personality. That's the heart. So your personality actually becomes rough. It actually becomes harsh. It becomes hardened. Many times, especially on the weekends, on Friday nights, on Saturdays sometimes, or when we're invited somewhere, we always get into groups, we have discussions, especially the youth. We can go hours and hours speaking to one another, having a good time. Always remember, if in those sessions Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not mentioned, or something which pleases God, if you're not discussing anything that is fruitful, anything that is productive, what happens? The Imam alayhi salam, the Prophet alayhi salam, Prophet Isa, Prophet Musa, they all unanimously have mentioned that such gatherings harden the heart. I need to be careful. The hadith says on the day of judgment, when I look at my life and I see all those gatherings in which I participated in, all those gatherings, if the name of Allah was not mentioned, if something productive was not mentioned, this hardens the heart, and I will be regretful on the day of judgment. Every single gathering in this world will become a source of regret for me if I don't include the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or that which pleases Allah in my gatherings and discussions. Many of our youth, you see them these days, they sit behind the computer screen or they have their smartphones in their hands and they're chatting, they're typing, they're having conversations with other people. If this conversation is not a productive conversation, a conversation which does not remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this will harden your heart. And my dear youth, especially if you're chatting with the opposite gender, this is one of the greatest sources of hardening the heart. After that conversation, you pick up the Quran, you read it. You don't interact with it and you wonder why. What's going on? It's the month of Ramadan, I'm reading the Quran, I can't interact with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ask yourself, what were you doing these days? Whom are you chatting with? What are you chatting? What are you discussing? So this is the first source that generates the hardening of the heart. The second one, the second factor or the second cause that hardens the heart is to be arrogant with the people. Arrogance is one of the greatest factors that contributes to the hardening of the heart. When you act as if you are better than others, you're higher than others, you don't have to necessarily say this. Say this even if these thoughts cross your mind or you feel this in your heart. One of our dear brothers was once sharing with us. He said, I had a friend, we were in a country I was studying, and I had a friend, every once in a while we would get together, he would be with us, he would participate in our gatherings. After a while, we realized that he's not participating in our gatherings. He's not coming to our meetings. So I wondered, is he disappointed? Is he upset? Did we offend him? Did we do something wrong to him? So he says, I asked one of my friends to go to him, to ask him, what's wrong? Are you upset about anything? Why are you no longer coming and joining our sessions? His friend goes to him and he tells him, are you sad? Are you disappointed? Are you upset about anything? He says, no, nothing wrong has happened. I'm not disappointed in anything. He told him, then why don't you come with us and you join our gatherings? He said, well, recently I became a citizen of that country. Now his friends, they had not become citizens yet. He married a person from that country, a woman from that country, and he got his citizenship. He says, now that I have my citizenship, I consider myself to be from the first world countries. And my friends, they're from the third world countries. You see the arrogance? This is a true story, brothers. One of the brothers, he shared with me this incident. Look at the arrogance, subhanAllah. Now that you got the citizenship, suddenly you feel better than others? You're not willing to sit with your friends? Allahu Akbar min at-takabbur. Arrogance is a great source of hardening the heart. If I want my heart to be softened, I know where to start. Humble yourself and humble yourself. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, one day he used to always host guests, and he loved hosting guests. And he had made a vow that I would never have dinner by myself. I would not have dinner alone. I would always have dinner with a guest. One day he goes to his house and the door had been closed. When he says a guest, so Prophet Ibrahim is intrigued. Of course, he does not, offend him in any way. He told him, how did you get in here? Who gave you permission? Who is the one who gave you permission to enter? That's all he told him, because the door was closed. Now that person, who was a very glorious person, who was also very handsome, he told him, oh Ibrahim, he said something. Ibrahim realized that this person is an angel from Allah. He tells him, oh Ibrahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen his Khalil. Allah has chosen his friend. You know what Ibrahim said? Look at the humbleness of Prophet Ibrahim. He told him, tell me who is the Khalil of Allah so I can go right now and serve the friend of Allah. The angel told him, oh Ibrahim, it's you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen you and I'm giving you the good news. When he told him that, Ibrahim didn't think, oh yeah, it's gotta be me. Of course it's me. Who other than me on the face of this planet can be Khalil ar-Rahman? Of course it's me. No. He genuinely asked with all humbleness, with all sincerity, O angel of God, tell me, who is the Khalil so I can go serve the Khalil of Allah? This is the humbleness of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. So this is the second factor. This third cause that hardens one's heart is to cut ties with family members, brothers and sisters. We still have a few more days of the month of Ramadan. Inshallah, none of us here are on bad relations with any relative, with any of our arham, any of our family members, even some distant relatives. Because if we're on bad terms, if we have severed ties, we're no longer speaking to one another, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause the hearts to be hardened. This is the third one. The fourth reason why our hearts become hardened is when we oppress other people, when we take away their rights, or when we backbite them. When I have a habit of backbiting people, speaking about their faults, speaking about their private lives, this desensitizes me. It makes me an insensitive person, and eventually it hardens the heart. This is the fourth one. Be careful of this one. Usually in our gatherings, we love to gossip, we love to backbite. Realize that with every gossip, with every backbiting, you are hardening your heart. Qaswatul qalb. This is the fourth one. The fifth one is to break one's promise or covenant with Allah or with those who are around you. When we look at Bani Israel and how their hearts became hardened, you know what the reason was? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, فَبِمَا نَقْضِهِمْ مِيثَاقَهُمْ لَعَنَّاهُمْ وَجَعَلْنَا قُلُوبَهُمْ قَاسِيَةً. Because they broke their covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because you see, they had a covenant with Musa. Musa told them, if I save you, if Allah saves you from the Pharaoh, if Allah destroys Fir'aun, and we save you from the misery and the oppression of Pharaoh, will you believe in Allah and follow the commandments? They said yes. We have a deal. As soon as Allah saves them, they broke that promise, they broke that deal, and they did not fulfill those commandments. And they went to worshipping the idol, the calf. One major reason why the heart becomes hardened, if I have a habit of breaking promises, brothers and sisters. If I don't stick to my word, whether it's with Allah, you promise Allah to do something. On Laylatul Qadr, you promise yourself, you promise your Lord to achieve so much throughout this year. But I don't stick to any one of them. I don't stick to my promises. Or I promise my parents, I don't fulfill the promise. I promise my friends, I break my promise. I don't stick to my word. This is one source of generating that hardening of the heart. So this is the fifth one. The sixth reason why the heart becomes hardened is when we lack knowledge about our faith. عَدَمُ التَّفَقُّهِ فِي الدِّينِ. To be well versed in your faith, to know your faith, the branches of faith, and also the pillars of faith. How many of us can truly say, I know my fiqh, I know my Islamic rulings? If you're a businessman and you don't know the Islamic laws regarding conducting a transaction, regarding interest, regarding usury, regarding observing the rights of the buyers, the sellers, your partners, and once you break those laws and you have no clue about what your religion says, this will harden your heart. Seeking knowledge is one of the most important steps that we can take in order to keep our hearts pure and soft. Lack of knowledge is what actually generates the hardening of the heart. This is number 6. Number 7, brothers and sisters, and especially our youth, laziness. When you waste time, you're lazy and you don't do something productive. Over time, this hardens the heart according to our narrations. Number 8, listening to music. I can't tell you about how much music impurifies the heart and hardens the heart. Qaswatul qalb. One major source of qaswatul qalb is from listening to music. If you find that your heart is not soft, it doesn't interact with the Holy Quran. You pray but you don't feel the effect of your salah. Ask yourself, am I listening to music all the time? Am I addicted to music? This is one source that is hardening my heart and keeping me away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 8 or number 9, tulul aman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to Prophet Musa. Allah tells him, oh my beloved Musa, لا تطول في الدنيا أملك فيقسو قلبك والقاسي القلب مني بعيد. Don't have long hopes. Many of us, we have long hopes. Yes, inshallah, 30 years from now, I'll get my act straight. I'll fix my faith. I'll fix my religion. Inshallah, 10 years from now, I'll wear the hijab. I'll be a good person. I'll be mindful of my prayers. I'll be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This hardens the heart. Don't have long hopes. Who's given you that guarantee that you will live so long? Who's given you that guarantee? Look at the people around you. How many youth have we lost, brothers and sisters? How many youth? How many youth have we lost? Many people whom you know, or you know people who know them. Suddenly, death suddenly strikes. Allah will not ask you for permission. The angel of death will not ask me for my permission before knocking at my door, before taking my soul. Tulul amal. Don't postpone. Do it now because you may not have a second opportunity. There may be no tomorrow. There may be no tomorrow. These are some of the important causes that actually generate the hardening of the heart, brothers and sisters. Now there's one very important one before we get to the most important one, and which is the topic of our discussion. One of the most important causes and the most dangerous causes that hardens the heart is aklul haram. When you eat something which is haram. Now there's two types of haram. Obviously meat, which is not prepared according to the Islamic way, is haram food. We all know that. And this plays a very negative role in hardening the heart. It takes the khushu' from your life. You will not enjoy your ibadah, you will not enjoy the Quran. It takes you further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there is a second type of haram food. Whenever my income is from an unlawful source, from a haram source, I deal with interest, with riba. I defraud people. I cheat others. I cheat my partner. I cheat my buyers. I cheat everyone in society. And I think this is a way of being smart, right? Some people think when you cheat, you're actually smart. When you try to go around, the rules of engagement with others, the rules of transactions, you think you're actually being smart. You're feeding yourself and you're feeding your family haram, that which is unlawful. If I have taken anyone's right financially, if I don't pay my religious dues, zakat al-khums, this hardens my heart. And this is exactly what Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam told his enemies on the day of Ashura. You know what he said to them? The Imam ﷺ on the day of Ashura, when his enemies surrounded him, the Imam wanted to give them advice, to admonish them. They refused to listen. The Imam told them, just listen to me, listen to what I have to say. His words fell on deaf ears. They were not willing to listen to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. This is the grandson of Rasulullah. Imam Ma'soom, and you're not willing to listen to him. No matter what he would say, they would not be moved. They would not be moved. They had hearts of stone. You know why? The Imam alayhi salam says, إِنَّ هَؤُلَاءِ قَوْمٌ مُلِئَتْ بُطُونُهُمْ مِنَ الْحَرَامِ وَاسْتَحْوَذَ عَلَيْهِمُ الشَّيْطَانِ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ ذِكْرَ اللَّهِ وَقَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. He says, these are a group of people whose stomachs have been filled with haram. And therefore the shaitan was able to overwhelm them, to surround them. And they forgot the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and their hearts became hardened. Haram food, brothers and sisters. Ask yourself, where is the source of my income? Is it from a halal source or from a haram source? Sometimes when we look at some of these corrupt rulers, in the Middle East and elsewhere, we wonder, how is it that they have such cruel hearts? Why? They don't understand what their people are going through. They have no mercy on their nations. Wallahi, they have no mercy. You know why? It's because of all that haram money that they're usurping from the Muslim treasury. All that oil is sitting beneath them, and all they do is, rob and steal that money from their own people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hardens their heart. Their hearts becomes more hard than a stone. Why? Because it's all haram money. They're feeding themselves and their souls haram money, and this is the effect of it. They will be cruel. They don't care. They could see millions of people suffer in front of them, being killed in front of them. They absolutely do not care because their hearts have become hard. Now let's come to the main reason and the main cause that hardens the heart. And this can apply to all of us, brothers and sisters, especially those of us who read the Quran, who pray, who fast in the month of Ramadan. Let's go to Surat Al-Zumr, verse number 22, and explore the most dangerous factor and cause that hardens the heart. Before verse 22 in Surat Al-Zumr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the rain coming down on the earth, and how this rain causes the vegetation of various colors to grow. SubhanAllah, it's one rain, it's colorless, right? It has no color. But you see how Allah has placed the blessings in the rain and in the soil. The healthy soil will absorb the rainwater, and it will generate to you these wonderful, colorful plants, colorful vegetation. And that's how a pure heart is. A pure heart is one that absorbs the verses of the Quran. It absorbs the maw'idha, the admonishment, the advice. But then you have hearts which are hard as a stone. And you've seen the stone. It can't absorb the rain. That's why vegetation normally does not grow in rocks and stones. It's very difficult for it to grow in rocks. Then in verse 22, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Pay attention to this verse. It's very powerful and it's very alarming. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in verse 22, أَفَمَنْ شَرَحَ اللَّهُ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ فَهُوَ عَلَى نُورٍ مِّن رَبِّهِ. Is the one whose chest has been opened to Islam by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he walks on a luminous path. Is he like the one whose chest has not been opened to the path of Allah, who does not walk on a luminous path? Then what does the Quran say? فَوَيْلٌ لِلْقَاسِيَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ مِنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Woe unto those who have a hard heart because of dhikrullah. Why? Why have their hearts become hardened? From dhikrullah, from the Quran, from the remembrance of Allah. Wait a minute. What is the Quran telling me here? The word min here, as the Mufassirin have translated, the word from means bisabab, because of. These people, their hearts have hardened because of the Quran. Is that possible? What is this verse saying? My heart becomes hardened because of the Quran? But isn't the Quran the source of guidance? Isn't the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the source of softening the heart? How is it that the Quran is saying min dhikrillah? The cause of it is dhikrullah azza wa jal. How is that possible? You see, the Holy Quran is a book of guidance. It's a lamp. It's a nur. It's light. Now this lamp, if you give it to a responsible person, he will use this lamp to find his way. And he'll be guided. Or he'll do things with it. Imagine if our lives were without electricity. All the blessings that we have from electricity. From light. Light shows us our way. We can achieve many things. But if you give this same lamp, which is generating light, it's the same lamp, if you give it to a thief, to a murderer, what happens? This same lamp, which is used for guidance, if it's given in the wrong hands, if it falls in the wrong hands, if it's given to a thief, if it's given to a murderer, he'll use this same lamp to do what? To kill, to steal, to break into someone's house. This same lamp. Now the Quran is the book of guidance. It's a lamp, but it depends on who's using this lamp. This lamp can either take me to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or it can take me away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a verse at the end of Surat Al-Tawbah. What does it say? Allah is speaking about those verses which are revealed. وَإِذَا مَا أُنزِلَتْ سُورَةٌ. When Allah reveals a new chapter. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَقُولُ أَيُّكُمْ زَادَتْهُ إِيمَانًا. Some of the hypocrites will ask, who amongst you his faith increased because of this new verse? They're asking this question. The Quran gives the answer. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. As for those who have iman, زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَهُمْ يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ. It increases their faith. Every new verse that would reveal during the time of the Prophet, every new chapter would increase their iman and their faith. And those believers would be very happy when a new verse would come down. وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٍ. And as for those who have a disease in their hearts, what does the Quran say? فَزَادَتْهُمْ رِجْسًا إِلَىٰ رِجْسٍ. Allah says, as for those who have a disease in their hearts, this same Quran, this same verse, what does it do to them? It adds abomination to their own abominations. It adds impurity to the impurities of their hearts. So the Quran can add impurities? Yes, it depends on how you interact with the Quran. It depends on how you treat the Quran. This same Quran which you're reading, this could be the cause and the source of the hardening of your heart. Let me give you an example. When you read the Quran and you don't genuinely make the intention to implement the teachings of the Quran. I read the Quran. Alhamdulillah, I take the Quran, flip page after page. But my life does not show that I'm actually reading the Quran. Because look, the Quran is not, a storybook for us to read and then put it back on the shelf. It's a prescription. When a doctor gives you a prescription, what do? Do you read it, memorize it 100 times? Read it 100 times. I have to take this medicine, read it 100 times, and then put it away. And you don't go to the pharmacy and you don't buy the medicine. You're making a joke out of it. You are making a joke out of your doctor and out of the prescription. Take this example, because this applies to us, brothers and sisters. Sometimes if I see my heart is not interacting, this could be a reason. Because it's the way I'm reading the Quran. Because I'm not implementing the teachings of the Quran. If you go to the best doctor here in Halifax, and you tell him, look, I'm suffering from this condition. And he tells you, here, take this prescription, go buy this, use it for a month, and you'll be fine. You take this prescription, you kiss it, you put it on the shelf. It's very blessed. You put it on your head. You keep reading it hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. You memorize it like a parrot. But then you don't go to the pharmacy. And every year you keep looking at that prescription, looking at that prescription. What are you doing to your doctor? You're mocking your doctor. You're making a joke out of your doctor. Look, the prescription is for you to use, to implement, to buy the medicine, not for you just to read and bless yourself with. Unfortunately, this is how we have treated the Quran. And we wonder why. What's wrong with us? What's wrong with my heart? Habibi, inspect the way in which you read the Quran. When you read the Quran and 10 seconds later you go back to your old habits and to your gossiping and to your sins and to the music and to your entertaining life and to oppressing the rights of others and disrespecting your parents and not wearing the hijab, you're making a joke out of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why read the Quran in the first place? You know, it's like someone who gives you advice. He'll tell you this, look, I'm giving you advice, valuable, precious advice. If you don't want to take my advice seriously, then khalas, I'll just be quiet and not give you the advice in the first place. But for me to give you the advice, and you listen to the advice, but it goes from one ear, it comes out through the other ear, what's the point? You're making a joke out of my advice. Unfortunately, many Muslims, they make a joke out of the Quran. This is the irony that we're living. When I don't make a genuine effort, we try. I'm not saying you read the Quran once and you become infallible. No, but at least show that you're genuinely, sincerely trying. You're trying hard. If I'm not trying hard to implement what I read in the Quran, then I am mocking the Holy Quran, brothers and sisters. I'm mocking the Holy Quran. Reading the Quran requires something that is called basira. I have to have that inner insight. For me to see the reality of things, to see the consequences of all actions. This is very important, to have that inner insight. Don't just read the Quran like that. Be a critical thinker. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, in one hadith, he explains who the basir is. The one who has insight. إِنَّمَا الْبَصِيرُ مَنْ سَمِعَ فَتَفَكَّرَ. The one who has insight is the one when he listens, when he reads, he immediately begins to contemplate, begins to think. He challenges himself. He challenges his own ideas, everyone's ideas. You critically challenge and analyze it. إِنَّمَا الْبَصِيرُ مَنْ سَمِعَ فَتَفَكَّرَ وَنَظَرَ فَأَبْصَرَ وَانْتَفَعَ فَاعْتَبَرَ. This is the one who has insight. Many of us, unfortunately, we don't have insight. And this is the problem that we see in the Muslim world today, brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, many of those who have gone astray, initially they may be, simple human beings. Look at what ISIS is doing. Sometimes you wonder, these ISIS people, subhanAllah, some of them memorize the Quran better than you can ever do in your life. And they read, sometimes with khushu', with a beautiful voice. But then, the same hand that carries the Quran and reads, will take out a dagger, a knife, and kill innocent people. Where is this hardening of the heart coming from? SubhanAllah. Haven't you memorized the Quran? Haven't you read the Quran? Yes, but they have no insight, no basira. This is their problem. Because their scholars, their evil, wicked scholars, never teach them to think, never to analyze. That's why I challenge you. If you could ever have one productive, discussion or debate with an ISIS member, try it. They won't let you. They'll never have a fruitful conversation with you, because the minute you challenge their ideas, they either change the subject or turn away, or if they can, they'll shoot you right there. They'll shoot you right there. Because they've been trained to memorize certain teachings, and they don't use their brain to challenge those teachings. They don't critically analyze. Even their scholars, even some Wahhabi scholars, you go to them, you ask them a simple question. They beat around the bush. They don't give you a straight answer, because they don't critically think, and they don't want you to critically think. And this is the disease that the Muslim Ummah is facing today. Yes, they can memorize the Quran all they want, but what's the point? When they have no basira, when they have no inner insight, no critical analysis of what they're reading, they're just parrots. They're just parrots reading things that they have no clue what they're reading. And if you want to know who's a true scholar, ask him a question, challenge him, you'll see he answers you straight, directly. He doesn't beat around the bush or give you indirect answers. No, that's how you know this is a real scholar. This is a person who has insight. Most of their scholars, look at their status, look at their state. And this is the disease of the people who fought Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. You know those Khawarij, many of them memorized the Quran, brothers and sisters. But it was this Quran which hardened their hearts, because they did not treat it properly. One day Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, in the middle of the night, he was walking with his companion Kumayl. Kumayl, a great companion. As they were walking, they heard the voice of a man reciting the Quran so beautifully, so beautifully. And he was reciting this verse, أَمَّنْ هُوَ قَانِتٌ آنَاءَ اللَّيْلِ. It's saying about the one who stands in the middle of the night and he does qunut, he worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the verse after that speaks about those who have knowledge. Beautiful verse, with so much khushu', he was reading it. What happened? Kumayl, in his heart, he thought to himself, he didn't say anything to Imam Ali. He thought to himself, wow, what a beautiful recitation. This man has so much iman. He has so much khushu'. In the middle of the night, he's reading this verse. أَمَّنْ هُوَ قَانِتٌ آنَاءَ اللَّيْلِ سَاجِدًا وَقَائِمًا. He was so shocked. Beautiful recitation. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam looked at him. He told him, "Oh Kumayl, don't be deceived by the recitation of this man. This man has a disease in his heart and he's one of the people of hell, and I shall explain you one thing." The years go by, comes the day of Nahrawan, when those Khawarij were fighting Amir al-Mu'mineen. After the battle was over, Imam Ali was passing by some of the bodies. He looked at one of those killed, one of those bodies. The Imam pointed to him and he told him, "Kumayl, amman huwa qanitun ana al-layl." The Imam read that verse. This is the same person whom you thought had khushu'. It's the same person. He's amongst the people of hell because he fought the Imam of his time. This is the same disease that we see. Yazid ibn Muawiyah, he memorized the Quran according to some accounts. Some accounts even say Shim, the killer of Imam al-Hussein, he had memorized parts of the Quran. But it is this Quran which caused them their destruction, because they had no inner insight, because they made a joke out of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes when we're praying, it could be my salah, brothers and sisters, that's actually hardening the heart. It could be my own prayer. My own salah could be hardening the heart. Because when I pray, and I don't care about what I'm saying, what I'm doing, and minutes later I go back to my old ways, I'm making a joke out of my salah. When I fast, but only my stomach fasts, my eyes, they don't fast. My ears, they don't fast. My tongue, that doesn't fast. My legs, my hands, nothing fasts. I am making a joke out of the siyam. And this siyam will be the source of my destruction. It will cause my heart to be hardened. We need to pay attention to this. Make sure it's not the Quran or your salah or your fasting or your ibadah that's actually hardening your heart. That is one great source of hardening the heart. If I don't observe the conditions of the Quran and the conditions of salah and the conditions of fasting, then I will suffer from these consequences. When a heart becomes hardened, brothers and sisters, it is unmoved. Nothing can move it. You hear about events going around the world. Nothing moves you. The tear simply does not come down. Some people, they just can't cry. And one reason could be the hardening of the heart. We find ourselves, we no longer care about others. We're no longer loving and caring. We feel this in our hearts. And when we want to show love to someone, or that we care, we have to force it upon ourselves. It's like we're acting. We're not being genuine, because in our heart, we simply don't care. Who cares about other people? We lose that interest. And you know, a problem that we have, especially in Western societies, is that life becomes mechanical. You know, we become like robots. We work, We go to our jobs, we pay the bills, and that's it. For 60 years, that's what I do. We become like robots. This mechanical life actually hardens the heart. And many professionals, you could be, for example, a doctor, a lawyer, or any professional. The problem that they fall into is that psychologically, when they look at people, they no longer see people, they begin to see patterns. Because you see people, they behave in predictable patterns. You no longer begin to see them as human beings. You're a doctor, all you see is patients. Patients are something abstract. You don't see them as human beings. This hardens the heart. In order for me to soften my heart, I need to see the humaneness in the people, the human side of them. Don't just see them as patterns. This is very dangerous. Let me give you an example. Let's say you see a mailman on the street. He's walking towards your house and delivering you the mail. You know what the average person sees when you see a mailman? That's what you see, a mailman. You see a robot, this abstract figure who's doing his job. You don't see him as a human being. The next time you see a person like that, you see anyone on the street, anyone who's doing their job. You see a construction worker, for example. Don't say this is a construction worker. Because the minute you label and you consider that person a construction worker, and you begin to see patterns and objects instead of people, that takes away the softness and the mercy in your heart. And you will no longer be loving and caring. The next time you see a person like that, think for a few seconds. This person is a human being. He or she has a family that they're supporting. They have their own challenges. They have emotions just like I have emotions. That's how you train yourself. Because if you don't do that, you will become insensitive. And over time, this is one major source of hardening the heart, brothers and sisters. And the worst thing is labeling. Allahu Akbar. Racism and labeling. It's the greatest source of hardening the heart. When you look at groups and you just create a label for them. The religion of Islam is highly anti-labels. Don't label people. Oh, those Arabs, those Japs, those whatever. Because when you do that, you take the humanness out of them. Because when you say those Japs, all you see is Japs. That's all you see. You don't see human beings who have emotions like you, who live lives like you. And then you begin to discriminate against them. The evil dictators and the tyrants and those people who committed crimes in history, the root of it was labeling, because they labeled. It's us versus them. They are a different label. And this leads to discrimination. That's why the Quran says, وَلَا تَنَابَزُوا بِالْأَلْقَابِ. Don't make labels for one another or nicknames for one another. Because you begin to see that person as a robot, as an object. You don't see that person as a human being. Therefore, we have to be very careful, brothers and sisters. Let's make sure we know what the causes of hardening the heart is, and make sure that your salah, your Quran, your siyam is not actually hardening your heart. Make sure you observe its conditions, you respect it, you try to implement it, make sure your salah has an impact on your life. Then it will soften your heart. Then you can see that in your heart, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created so much rahmah, brothers and sisters. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open our hearts and chests in what remains in the holy month of Ramadan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove any traces of having a hardened heart and to soften our hearts with the blessings of as-salati ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.